This show is brought to you by Imperial Yeast. You hear us gushing over Imperial Yeast all the time, and that's because their yeast performs for us in every batch we brew. Imperial Yeast is adored by commercial breweries and home brewers alike. Their pitch-right pouches are jam-packed with 200 billion fresh yeast cells, guaranteed to deliver flawless, fast fermentations every time. Imperial Yeast strains are grown by a team of pro brewers and home brewers in Portland, Oregon, who live to help brewers learn more and ferment better. Join our recipe-receiving Patreon groups and get a free upgrade to premium Imperial Yeast with every recipe kit that ships out to you. Learn more at patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and come brew with us.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Hello and welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing. Today I am joined by the Director of Operations at homebrewsupply.com, Mr. Laddick. Joe Erm, my friend. How are you today?
Hey, oh man, hanging in there. It's been a wild last several weeks, maybe I guess it's been about a month now since all this stuff kicked off, and we are trying to keep up with orders, trying to keep stuff in stock, but it's been crazy how many people are either picking up the craft or getting back into it. And you know, it's like, it's not only us, it's like I've noticed that some of our suppliers are having some delays and competition as well. So we're in a pretty good spot right now as far as just our overall sales and everything else. So yeah, it's been wild.
And I'm glad you joined me. I was so worried, and I hope I made it come across like you weren't. I didn't want you to feel obligated to do the show with me, because I was hoping to be a change of pace for you. Like,
yeah, no, it's good to get out of from upstairs for a little while for sure. Take a little
have an actual excuse to get out of there, right? Like now, it's like hey guys, I got to go do something. Like, no, get back up there, Joe. But no, Josh, I have to do the podcast. Josh made me. Okay,
he's twisting my arm, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this quarantine stuff, man. It's y'all, like, I can't even imagine with y'all up there, because obviously work hasn't changed. If anything,
we've got everything in stock for people to order and get those orders fulfilled as quick as possible. So.
Exactly. It's nuts, man. It's crazy to me, but I appreciate it, because on the other end, I've been helping with support stuff lately for Keg Connection, and I've been telling them, people, the good thing is a lot of customers are very understanding of the situation.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I haven't had anybody real upset. It's crazy how many people are ordering that nobody's, like you said, everybody's understanding and realizes kind of, what's the situation. So that helps a lot.
And I would imagine it seemed like homebrew, we've been doom and gloom on the show before about after we go to HomebrewCon and they'll give us the state of
the numbers.
They give it homebrew's dwindling and shops are closing up. And then and now it's like, oh, we can't keep up.
Right. Yeah. It's wild.
I know y'all are having to deal with that stress, and I'm over here. My biggest stress is trying to pass the time in an entertaining way while also being productive. I've been training Zach. Don't tell him I'm doing this, and he's like 8 weeks behind on episodes. You remember that episode of The Office where Jim trains Dwight to want a mint? Like he every time that he hears the Windows boot up sound, it trains Dwight's ears to. He always offers him a mint, and then by the end of it,
he's got him under his control. Sure,
I'm doing that with Zach right now. Nice. I won't give away anything because I want to see if it's gonna work. But I'm training him. I'm training them good. And I
There you
think
go.
I think it's gonna work. And then I'm gonna have this whole big thing. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna just not ever talk about it and come back after the fact and delete all this out of this episode because it won't be as funny. But
Hide it from them, right?
how are you, before we get into like all the questions and then the small talk about the Patreon, how are you doing with the quarantine? Because in Comanche, I don't know. I mean, I imagine it's not as chaotic at like your grocery stores and all that as it is like in the Austin area. But how are you holding up?
I'm doing fine. We've Comanche, I think we're, kind of blessed to be in a more rural area versus, in a more populated city. It's just, we don't have as many cases. We don't have quite as many of the issues of people being condensed like that. So, I'm doing fine. We had a little bit of an issue with the grocery store, right off the start, but they've kind of got their feet under them, and I hadn't really seen any issues there recently. So yeah, I mean, everything's going good. It's just busy, working a little bit more hours, but it's good. It's a much better spot to be in than trying to scrape, the bottom of the barrel to get orders, to get customers to place orders and that kind of thing, which like, at this point, it's just like, we're working to get as many out as we can each day. And we're working all day. So it's a good place to be.
There was a day Todd told me, he said, can you, he was joking with me. He goes, I know that, I pay you to bring people in. Is there a way I can pay you to maybe stop people from coming in like right just today? And he obviously was joking. He changed his tune. But it was like a day y'all did. It was like 320 orders between the two websites.
Yeah. I know I've been looking at the numbers on both sites to just kind of see where we're at and, where the help needs to be and that kind of thing as far as the workload. And yeah, it's like we've been getting, I know Cat Connection is doing close to what we're doing. I think we're beating them a little bit right now. And it's been about what we make a month every week. Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy. It's been crazy. Yeah. But anyway, I appreciate you not only because you're taking the time to do the show. I appreciate what you're doing at Homebrew Supply. And I know Todd does too. He brought in lunch today and he was rubbing that in my face.
I was going to do it if he didn't. And I'm glad he beat me to it. Yeah. I got the red snapper.
Did you really?
Man, it was good.
Oh, you bastard. I love the harvest, for the 0.0001% of people listening who live in the Central Texas area. If you're in Comanche, the Harvest restaurant is legitimately one of the best restaurants I think I've ever been to in my life, much less just in Texas.
It's like the only nice fancy place we have in town. And it's like, it's crazy. I wish we had something that good in San Marcos when I was
That's what
there.
I mean. It is so good. And
afford, lunch prices are good too. Like dinner's kind of, like $30 a plate, but lunch is, 10 to $15. It's not bad at all.
Yeah. And high end food. It's really good.
Quality, fresh ingredients.
Very good. Yeah. And his name's Todd, Chef Todd. He, the better Todd, the cooking Todd. Well, I guess our Todd cooks too, but this Todd.
I think the Chef Todd brews a little bit too. He's grown his own hops and stuff. He's a super cool dude to talk to.
He is. And he's got like 80 pounds under on Todd. So he's my favorite version of Todd. But that was rude. But Todd's not here. Our Todd's not here. Before we get into the questions, some small talk. One for our Patreon members, some announcements. Our recipes for May, we did, I think it was February where we first introduced an option for, hey, you can choose this recipe or this recipe. And it was between a Marzen or a Fest beer. Went over very well. The feedback was good. So I talked to you and I talked to Todd and we kind of agreed like, hey, for this month, for May, we could go ahead and offer options as well. So we have two recipes, the Hefeweizen and the Swingin Blonde Ale. If you don't mind, like what, obviously one's a wheat beer, one's just a blonde, but like, I know both of those are very popular.
Yeah, we kind of talked about, we got together and brainstormed what would be good recipes and a good options. And I think these two are really good. Both of them are really good for warmer weather. They're pretty low ABV. I think they're both clocking around 5%. So they're not super boozy. They're good summer and springtime drinking beers. And I think that's kind of what we had in mind going with those two. And I think the selection is a big deal. It's nice to be able to have a little bit of an option. For me, I was thinking about it as if I was a Patreon member, and I'm not a big wheat yeast fan, so I would have been a little disappointed in the choice of a Hefeweizen. But Swingin Blonde, it's about as simple and clean of a recipe as you can get. It's not overly hopped. The yeast isn't overbearing either. It's just like a nice crushable real simple, approachable beer. So I think it's nice to have that option. And you know, there's tons of people out there that their go-to either river beer or just, you know, go to the park and have a couple beers is a Hefeweizen. It's just a great, refreshing, hot day drinking beer. So I think that had a lot to do with it.
I'm going to ask my pop, because we've been brewing the Patreon kits as well. We just brewed on Monday the Happy Little Hops.
Right.
And what an interesting recipe. I didn't get to talk to you about it beforehand. The no bittering hops component to it. I'm very excited about when finishing this beer out, kegging it and trying it. Because first off, Citra and Mosaic,
yeah, that combination is so good too. Like they're both awesome on their own, but that combination, it's just like the perfect grapefruit that you kind of get from that, the grapefruit aroma and citrus flavor that you get. It's one of my favorite hop combinations. You can kind of probably notice that there's probably at least 6 of our recipes on our site use that combination.
Yeah.
So.
Well, to say the one you took to HomebrewCon last year, that pills, that Mosaic pills, that was like a fan favorite for people who were coming to our booth. It was just so Mosaic. I don't have the words to explain what, like you said, the grapefruit component of it. I think,
right. And you can almost get like blueberry from Mosaic too. It's got a really nice, just kind of like a danky, resiny citrus fruit essence to it. It's a great hop. Yeah,
such a good hop. But yeah, with the Hefeweizen or the Swingin Blonde for qualifying people at the $35 level, as in you get at that level, you get a recipe every other month. So if you didn't get one last month, you can write me in with what you want. You should have already gotten the message on your Patreon, but if you haven't, you can preemptively reach out to me. In the $50 level, which is the Patreon tier where you get a recipe every month, I have already reached out to most of y'all, but if this is your first time learning about this, you can also just preemptively message me, hey, I want the Hefeweizen, or I want the Swingin Blonde Ale and extract or all grain milled. We're very accommodating to what you need. And again, giving you more kudos. The way y'all get these out and the attention to detail is appreciated, because that's like every time I get a compliment for our Patreon, it's always stuff that I'm not actually directly involved with.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, you're part of you're the one driving the ship.
I'm the slimy sales guy making the pitch for this is the car you want to take home, lady. But it's really you guys. But I appreciate y'all. So yes, those are the 2 recipes. If you sign
I think it's good to have an option too, because I think one thing we mentioned when we were doing the Fest and Marzen choice is they are both technically lagered. So if we ever do choose a lager, it'll be good to have an option. I think that month at least that we can have an ale as an option too, because there's a lot of people who don't have the fermentation temperature control and stuff. So
exactly. And we've accommodated before, because I've made the announcement. One time we did the Northern English Brown Ale, and a guy wrote in and he was like, hey, I don't want to be that guy, and it's okay to say no, but this style like makes me gross. Like I hate brown ales. And I was like, oh, I think you'll like it. He goes, no, Josh, listen, I don't like them.
I know what I like.
Yeah. And so he was like, he said, I'm not even going to ask you for a recipe like by name. If you just, tell me another one you want to send. And so immediately I was like, how about a Kolsch? And he was like, that sounds great. I said, oh, perfect. Cool. Nice. But I agree with you. Like we're learning as we go. I mean, this thing's only been running since like October.
Sure.
So we're learning as we go. And everyone, our Patreon, I tell them all the time, the best community literally in the world is our audience, and especially the ones in our Patreon. These people in our private Facebook group, which you're a member of, and then the messages they give me back, could not be better people.
That's a good group of guys.
It's such a good group of people. Big time. I absolutely love it. So thank y'all for whoever, if you're already a part of it, even if you're not in our Patreon, thank you for tuning in. Really, if you're not related to me, a special thank you to you. And if you're not, I always tell
one other thing I guess I should mention too, not to interrupt you from thanking those people, but we did. I don't know if we decided on the yeast for the Swingin Blonde. I know the Stefan is going to work well, Imperial Stefan for the Hefeweizen, but I'm thinking that, so we had some issues with their flagship order last month, or this month, I guess technically, where they had plenty of yeast, but they were having issues with their packaging supplier. So they didn't have anything to pack that flagship in. Well, fortunately they had plenty of independents, and that works just as great with that style that we sent out this month. So that we ended up working out, but I'm going to have to get with them and kind of see what we're looking on numbers. I'm thinking house would probably be the best for the Swingin Blonde. It's an English strain, but it'll work really well with that style of beer. So
perfect. And I believe it was you or Todd. Someone told me y'all have brewed it with house and it turned out great. So that was my understanding too, is we'd probably go with house only, again, because packaging. It turns out this whole virus thing is really disrupting life. What a pain in the butt.
I know. Well, I thought this was America.
I thought this was America. So yes, wrapping up the small talk, we also have our giveaway for next week is going to be a cleaning kit that's going to come with Brew Clean. It's going to come with the BTF Iota 4, and we're throwing in a 32-ounce bottle of the QA. If you listen to last week's episode with Jonathan Etley, which is one of our most downloaded episodes in regards to the amount of time and first day downloads, it did well. I think maybe Jonathan has a better network than I do, but he got the word out, and it was well received. We received a ton of questions, which is a great segue to let y'all know he did agree to do our live Q&A for our Patreon members. It's tomorrow, February 24th at 11:30 a.m. Central. If you want to join our Patreon at any level, with a $1 up to the recipe receiving levels, you have access to our private Facebook group. If you're in our Patreon and you don't do Facebook and you want to take part, let me know. I can get you a private link for YouTube streaming it, or I'll figure some way out so you can participate live. If you can't participate live, you can email me your questions to Jonathan, Joshua at homebrewhappyhour.com, and I'll include them on there and give you credit, and he'll get your questions answered. He's very anxious and ready to do it. He's such a cool guy. I love this industry. I can't say that enough. Even with this whole COVID-19, I still declare it's the best time to be alive for a home brewer. So our giveaway will be next week, live on the episode, while we're recording it. So last month, our winner was George, our buddy George from our Patreon, and I did it on that show, but I didn't screencast it. And so Todd was like, "You're going to get an email, man. Someone's going to say you fixed it." And of course, the only people who did that were people trolling me. Thank y'all for trolling me, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure out a way so y'all can see that I'm not cheating for people that happen to know me. So, and I say know me. We're such a tight-knit community. Knowing me means we interact with each other on Instagram. Right. I don't know.
Or bump into each other at the Homebrew Con once a year.
Yeah. These people, if they really knew me, they wouldn't listen to this show. I mean, if they really knew me. But anyway, so all that's done. You can go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour for more information to join and about the live Q&A and about the giveaways and all that stuff. So all of that out of the way, I do have 3 questions for us, Joe. I'm going to get right into it. Our first one came from Garth, who used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Garth wrote, "Hey guys, just found your show and love it. Been binge listening to all of your old episodes." Ugh, Garth, don't go too far back. So I want to know, what's the verdict on secondary fermenters? Should I never move to secondary, or are there times you should move to secondary? Thanks for all the good info. Joe, that's been the question.
That's a good question too.
Because in recipes that James has written, it always calls for secondary, but spoiler, James doesn't always do secondary fermentation. So, and in homebrew supply recipes too, I know on the recipe side, it's kind of a safe bet to tell people to do it, to get the best absolute produced beer at the end of the process. But in your opinion, what are your thoughts on secondary?
So it's a lot of it's personal preference, and a lot of it has to do with the style. In my opinion, at least for IPAs, anything that it's more than average hops, I typically skip it. I have the ability to cold crash, which helps a lot. So I'll skip the secondary in lieu of a cold crash, and that helps clarify. So the main things. Let's start off with the main things you're going to get from doing a secondary is clarification. And if you plan to age a beer, obviously you don't want to age it on the yeast. You're going to get some off layers. After about a month on the yeast, I would get it to a secondary if you don't plan on getting into bottles or a keg. So clarifying it, and certain beers, especially the ones that tend to have higher ABV and some darker malts, more complex malt bills, tend to do better over time. They age and tend to just, with age, kind of the complexity develops, and some of that heat, you lose some of the heat from the fusel alcohol, like the high alcohols can come off a little boozy. So that'll mellow over time. So I would suggest probably doing a secondary anytime you plan on leaving your beer in a fermenter for longer than a month. If so primary typically takes about 2 weeks, just rough, 10 to 14 days. And if you don't move it after that, to a secondary, to get it off the yeast, you want to get it into a keg or bottle. But if you don't want to use a secondary, 3 weeks maybe in the primary at the most is what I would suggest. And again, there's nothing wrong with using a I know people that kind of get discouraged because it is more of a chance to introduce some wild yeast or some bacteria. But if you're cleaning wells or sanitizing properly, you shouldn't really have that issue. I mean, that's part of the process is making sure everything's clean and sanitized. So I think it really depends on the style you're brewing, your time constraints. If you don't have time to let it age, you can always get it in a keg or bottles and let it age in the keg. So I think the main, again, just to tie everything back together, the main idea is you don't want your beer sitting on your yeast after a month of it being in there. You're going to possibly get some off flavors from the yeast. And if you've got a big boozy, especially tend to be dark beers, they do better over time. Obviously, lagers are the same case. You lager a beer off the yeast for sometimes 6 weeks and or even 6 months. Sometimes people do it for like the Oktoberfest is traditionally lagered all summer from March until October when it's drank. So you can definitely get a lot out of secondaries, but they're not completely necessary for all styles. They're preferred for a lot of styles like lagers and some of the darker beers. I did a barley wine with my old roommate that we let age in a secondary for about a year. So, I mean, and it turned out awesome. So I don't know exactly how much that helped. We didn't drink a whole bunch of it before it aged. So, I just kind of assume that it got better over time. But those are kind of my thoughts at least.
Yeah, I was going to ask you too, does the presence of additions or not the presence, but like for the happy little hops, for instance, right? We're going to dry hop another ounce or a half ounce of each of the Citra and the Mosaic. I don't recall if the instructions had called for pushing it to secondary before or after. Is there like a rule you follow? If I know I'm going to dry hop, I always do it at time in the fermentation, and it's always done on top of yeast or in secondary without the presence of yeast.
Yeah, generally speaking, for most dry hopping, you want to wait until fermentation is complete because it will affect the resin, and the hops themselves can coat the yeast and prevent them from multiplying as easy. So generally speaking, you want to wait, about 10 to 14 days until your fermentation is complete and then add the hops. Whether you move it to a secondary or add them just directly in the primary, that's going to be up to you. If you plan on adding them and letting them sit for 3 weeks, which is usually not recommended, you typically want your dry hops in there for 5 to 7 days and then get that beer in the keg or the bottles. What you can get is a little bit of a vegetable taste if you let them sit in there too long. So I typically just pitch them straight in, no muslin bag or anything, just pour them straight in the fermenter primary and then wait 5 days, cold crash it for 2 and then keg it. So they're in there a total of 7 days on when I usually do it.
That's what I'm going to do, and that's why I asked the question so that you would answer it for me. And I made up Garth. He's not a real person. It was all it was all just to get an answer for how I should do the. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, secondary is such a funny conversation because I don't know if there's and I'm doing air quotes for audio only listeners. I don't know if there's a right answer. It's all preference, like you opened up with. It's what are you wanting to do? Do you have the time? Are you in a rush? Do you need the clarity? Correct me if I'm wrong. Clarity is really about presentation, or do you believe clarity also affects like the overall integrity, like taste as well, and body and mouthfeel?
Generally speaking, it's just appearance, aesthetics, but like they have the crazy kind of hazies, IPA stuff that's been going around. And I do feel like in general, they have a little bit softer mouthfeel, but I don't know if that's, completely attributed to the haze. It could be a lot of them use lactose or, other things to kind of get that effect. The water chemistry may be different than a normal IPA. So I really don't think, generally speaking, at least that any kind of chill haze or cloudiness typically affects the flavor. It really is, pretty much just appearance most of the time.
Yeah. So Garth, secondary, the verdict, is kind of what you make it, man. I think Joe, you had some good insight like on what he's doing and on the style. And I think too, the instructions that y'all write for Homebrew Supply and the instructions that James provides on his recipes that are used on Cat Connection explain it well per recipe. Like there is a generic part to each recipe that goes, here's the brew day, what it looks like, and here's what fermentation looks like. But like on Homebrew Supplies, they have a section called Brewers Notes. And if, I know y'all are very good because I read the Brewers Notes about putting on there, hey, secondary is really important for this one and here's why. Or
sure. Yeah. We try to, anything special about a certain recipe, that's where we try and kind of highlight that and give some advice there. But that's also why we give our phone number. People are always welcome to call and chat. And like we've been saying, we're busy, but there's always time to grab the phone and make sure somebody's brew day is going successfully. So
absolutely. So Garth, thank you for submitting the question. Right now is a great time to remind y'all, if you put in a question and we take it on the show, we will give you a $25 gift card to catconnection.com. Thank you, Todd Burns, for letting me spend your money. So moving on to question number 2 came also from the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com from Preston. And Preston wrote, I am moving from canned extract kits to partial mash. Is there ever a reason I would want to double mill the steeping grains? Thanks for my question. I'm from Australia. Preston. All right. Well, Preston, I forgot to add that part. He had put it on there because I meant to add in the top of the show. We've been getting an influx of people from Australia listening to our show. Thank you. I would love to come visit your beautiful country someday.
Right. I would love to go to Australia.
We need to make a point.
I watch a YouTube guy who does he's got his own little boat and he just drives off, out to the ocean and finds like random isolated islands and fishes and like camps, for a night or two. It's pretty beautiful out there.
We have, I'm always pretty vague just because I don't think it's very uncouth to talk like the business and numbers, but we have 5 digits worth of people who listen to the show in regards to audio downloads and not counting the video. And about, I would say at least almost 2,000 of them are in Australia, dude.
That's pretty wild. Yeah.
It's wild. Like
there's a lot of people who brew over there. I mean, that's, what is the Grainfather? That's where that's originally.
It is, yeah. And their parent company, Bevy, does well there. I believe Kedland is based out of mainland Australia. Yes. And they do well. Their videos, their YouTube channel is great. I love their video stuff.
Yeah.
I guess they're a competitor of Cat Connection, but not really. Because if I lived in Australia, I would probably buy from people who can ship to me in 5 days and
affordably
exactly. Well, like when we like Preston, because I wrote to him after he submitted it, and I found out he was from Australia because I said, "Oh, you got the $25 gift card." He was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, mate. And that's a terrible Australian accent, and I'm sorry. Now we went from 2,000 to 100 listeners. They all dropped off right now from that terrible accent. But he was like, maybe I'll use it, and I said, okay, well, if you don't, you don't. I wish I could send you something, and we're trying to figure out the logistics of shipping a shirt to him.
Nice.
in lieu of it, because Zach was telling me he thinks that the shipping could be reasonable on something that small and compact. Sure. It's just you don't get tracking right when you do, I guess, that small of a shipment. And
right.
And I guess, I don't know, our U.S. Postal Service, I'm being told right now they're heroes. I'm sure y'all are great. Y'all are delivering, and we appreciate you. And I can leave it at that. My local guy might be a bum, and that's not saying that everyone who works for the Postal Service is bad. He just my mail to my neighbors all the time. Come on, Lou. Or whatever. Yeah. I think it's Lou. Maybe that's the problem is I don't know his name. But anyway,
for his question though, I don't know if there's going to be much of an advantage to double milling for partial mash because you're really not using that grain to get a lot of sugar. You're not really intending to get much sugar out of that grain. It's really there for color, some flavor and aroma that you can kind of, that gets pretty apparent as soon as you start getting it in the water. And if that water's already hot and stuff, it starts changing color and you can really start smelling it come through. So I think that's the primary reason it's there. It's hard to get that. Like I've brewed some pure extract batches, and if they're more complex than, simple beers, it doesn't usually matter. Like the Hefeweizen, the Hellerweizen, I think that's pure extract for the extract version. And it's just because there's not a ton going on. It's, it's pretty straightforward. So if you're doing like stouts and porters and stuff, I would definitely suggest doing partial mash because of the roasted barley and the chocolate malt that you can really get a lot out of. Even though they make dark DME, it's just, I've never experienced it to be quite the same as using some real grains. So I don't think double milling is required by any means. I can't imagine it would hurt either. I don't think it's going to affect much. So, if you want to run them through twice for the heck of it, again, it's definitely not going to ruin the beer. The main idea behind the double mill is for people who brew in a bag all grain. So it's in attempts to get as more surface area touching the water by milling it a bit finer. You typically lose a little bit of efficiency doing a brew in the bag in the first place. So that's kind of an attempt to try and minimize that loss of efficiency. So again, with a partial mash, you shouldn't really need a double mill, but again, it's not going to hurt anything if you do double mill it. So
yeah, I was going to ask you to do a quick overview, because milling is also one of those parts where a new comer into home brewing gets confused when they're ordering a recipe, and it's like,
we've had calls. Yeah. I'm just not sure what you mean here. And it's like, I get it. A lot of places, they automatically crush every grain they send, they order them pre-crushed sometimes. So we've got a lot of people who like to order 3 or 4 at a time, and they may be putting 2 or 3 down the road to maybe 3 months, 4 months, even 6 months down the road. So they'll crush it right before they brew it. And that way it preserves the grains a little better. So yeah, we do get that question. And again, standard mill is going to be probably 80% of our customers. And then we do have, we've got a few, that number may be inflated. We've got quite a few brew in the bag people. And, that's just a little bit easier to use double milled grain that way. And, it's not too much harder for us. So
I have been real impressed with the influx of brew in a bag, and then also obviously the EBIAB, the brew in a basket. Seems like it's on the rise, right? In our little niche of brewing, it seems like people who home brew, a lot of people either make electric brewing in an all-in-one vessel, their primary only kind of way, or that is like they at least own the unit, even if that's not what they're primary brewing on. I wonder if it's like ease of use, you think, or
ease and convenience. Yeah, just if they've got this 3-vessel system that they got to roll out of the garage, and then there's just, maybe rain in, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think the ease, the convenience of it, pretty small and compact unit that they don't have to have several coolers or, I think it just makes sense for a lot of people.
Yeah, speaking of which, I have to get with Todd said y'all are going to ship me the spike. No, man, no, it's at my house. No, Todd said y'all are going to ship it, and maybe that's what I'll do. Not maybe, I'm making a declaration. That's what me and my dad will brew the Swingin Blonde on.
Nice. The EBIB.
Correct. Yeah, okay. Their new all-in-one system. Yeah, that we have a prototype. The one at the ranch. He said he's going to take it into the office at some point. Have y'all ship it, because I told him, don't do that. I'll come get it like when this all calms down and I'm starting to go back up there. I'll just bring it home with me, because what shipping, even though we're only
that thing would be expensive.
It should be expensive, right? That's what I said. Todd is what's the old man from Jurassic Park? Spare no expense. He's a real John Hammond. That's what he is right now. He's a real John Hammond. But anyways, Preston, thank you so much for submitting your question. We've got one more, and then we'll wrap up today's show. It came from Warren, who also used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Warren wrote in, "Hello, Joshua. I hope you are all doing well and that your families are safe and healthy. My local supply shop is open and doing well, but having a hard time keeping certain hops in stock. I'm relatively new to making my own recipes, so I have to admit that I'm not the best at understanding what hops would make good substitutes. Do you have any resources or advice for determining what hops would substitute best for Saaz hops, and why? Saaz seems like a pretty commonly used German. It's a noble hop, isn't it? Or am I making that up?
Most of them are. It's. I think traditionally it's from the Czech Republic, very close to Germany.
I'm going to scratch that out.
It is. I think it is considered noble.
Okay. I was just saying it is a Bohemian hop. That's right, because Saaz is what they use in Budvar, in Budweiser's Budvar in Prague. I knew that. I'm going to scrub all this out because I look like an idiot.
But there's some so. The first part of the question, there's tons of resources online. That's where I would start. Just type in Saaz hop substitute. And unfortunately, it being a noble hop, there aren't a ton of direct. There's like a Polish hop that we have trouble getting. I think it's called Lublin or something like that. I'd probably butchering the pronunciation, but we've we've got like 2 or 3 hops here that we sometimes subs for saws if we're having trouble getting it. I know we use Sterling and I want to say Spaltz, which are I think both German hops. So there are some pretty close similarities. The reason why I think the reason why substitutes work, for hops in general, because there's differences between strains and hops, but there are so many strains that some of them do have some overlapping qualities. So and a lot of things like Citra, for example, is a derivative of, or like a child, I guess, a child of Simcoe. So sometimes, although there's not a great straight substitution for Citra, Simcoe in a pinch sometimes will be pretty close. So there's things like that. They may have close relatives strains, or they may have been a hybrid of 2 strains. So I think that's kind of the reasoning that, if they're close in alpha acid percentage and they have some of the same characteristics, woody or herbal or citrusy, there's tons of flavor and aroma characteristics of each hop. So I think that's the idea behind why they would work well in place of another, is, they match some of those descriptors and they match at least close to the same alpha acid percentage, which is what gives you the bitterness that you actually, the efficiency out of your hop. So that's kind of the reasoning behind why, I guess.
And you, as the guy who's kind of fulfilling the orders, does it matter to you when you're deciding like, hey, I'm going to call this customer because we're out of this hops, but we're going to offer them these? Does it matter when the hops are going to be used? Like, does it make you change your mind? Like, oh, that's for bittering as opposed to for aroma, or is it still? You ultimately need the overall characteristics that the hops share inherently, regardless of what point of the brew process they're going to be used.
A little bit more of the latter, yeah. So, what time it goes in and what variety you're going to use in general, that will be tailored a little bit more to like the recipe creation and what you're intending to get out of that hop in the first place. But subbing it, if we're out of something, subbing it for a close substitute will typically, it doesn't usually matter too much about what time that is getting added. It's kind of just, Saaz is another one that it's typically not used like overloaded, like IPAs. You're not going to find a ton of like Saaz IPAs. So a lot of times, if the hop is not like the forefront of the beer, a lot of, like you said, Pilsners, it's a very common hop in Pilsners where you're not having that hop dominate the flavor profile. Then substituting, it's not going to make a world of difference. A lot of times it's kind of just an underlying ingredient to just give you enough bitterness to kind of balance the sweetness of the malt. So.
And Warren, your local homebrew supply shop is not unique right now, man. I can imagine. I was going to ask you, Joe, has it been? I think it is a little unique that they are open, but it may have just kind of. I know that a lot of them have been kind of closed due to. And getting the supplies mainly. Being able to get supplies, because I know from what I've heard through Todd, there's been issues sometimes with what's not in stock right now from and suppliers. We always have, like, when I place an order with our suppliers, we always have a handful of items that they may not be able to send, but it's definitely a bit more extreme at this point, where it's like half the order is like, oh, we can't send these items, and it's like I said, half the order. It's like, oh, well, let me get an order going with another supplier then. Yeah, I told Todd, I said, I'm going to open up my own recipe website right now, and it's just going to be Kolsch and Alt, and that's it, because it seems like y'all have all those needed for those recipes. So I was like, Todd, I'm going to do great. I'm going to drive all the traffic from the podcast. It's kind of funny. My dad, we just kegged our Kolsch. So we brewed on Monday. We brewed the Happy Little Hops Session IPA. We kegged the Kolsch, and so right now all we have on tap is an Alt and a Kolsch. And that's the dream. I've been saying that on this show for years. That's the dream. Oh, my mom kicked me out Monday. She was like, you gotta go home. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is my home. It's where I grew up. And she's like, but you're married now. I was like, what dream is this? No, we've been having a good time. My pop, he's retired. So he's been, the quarantine is maybe, exacerbating the boredness. And so brewing, we did our social distancing, friends. If y'all followed us on our Instagram at Homebrew Happy, or Instagram.com/Homebrew Happy Hour, I documented the whole brew day. It's in our stories highlight It was a really smooth brew day. I forgot, like we've been doing extract the last couple batches. I forgot how fun extract brewing can be. It's very straightforward. The time is what I loved about it the most, by the way. We were done, like, I want to say 3 hours, give or take.
That's the biggest advantage to extract.
It was
less stress, and it's just you're done before you know it.
Absolutely. And the recipes you'll have are just written out so easy to just follow. It's like this and okay, boom, 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 boom. It was a great brew day, and we spent more time playing cornhole or bad toss. Pardon me, I've been bad toss. I've said before, if I ever say that word, I was going to bleep it out just because I just feel weird saying that word. But bad toss. We played a lot of bad toss and horseshoes. So
nice.
It was a good. Yeah, this week has been decent weather. We had a little bit of rain yesterday, but anyways, I'm totally digressing from Warren. Like Joe said, the wonderful thing is, like, even I want to say, I've never used Brewer's Friend for this, but I want to say Brewer's Friend has some kind of index on their website, maybe not on the app, about hops and like profiling them and talking about like what you get out of this or this. And if you just even Google, like Joe was saying, you're going to find great resources for people's experience that says, hey, in this Bohemian Pilsner, I substituted Saaz for Spalter. And here's what I got out of it. And, for good or for worse, for blah, 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 blah. And that's, again, I just said it earlier in the show. If without us being in 2020 and having the internet and information at our fingertips, it wouldn't be this easy to just say, you can Google it. And that could be my answer for every question people submit to this show, and it'd be a very boring show. But like that's the reality of the hops part. And
you can pull up just Google hop substitution chart, and that's what I refer to a lot of times. I guess is what I mean by Google it is you pull up this chart. You can pull up by probably 10 or 15 at least websites have these, and you can basically just have a list of hops. You find the one that you're needing, and then it'll tell you the range of percentage that it typically is, and then to the right it'll have like 3 or 4 hopefully options that you can use to substitute. So,
and what I'll probably do is go to, because I think, where do we buy most of our hops from? I don't want to name drop and be wrong.
Brewcraft and BSG are kind of our 2 biggest suppliers.
I bet you one of them has to have that kind of chart. And
we have one hanging up in the brew room here from BSG, I think.
So I'll get a digital copy of it. Warren, you're listening to this right now. It'll be in the show notes at homebrewhappyhour.com. I'll lift it from them and just embed it in the show notes, and then I'll make it an actual accessible resource on homebrewhappyhour.com. Because you're right, Joe, that is something that I'm surprised this question hasn't come through like this on the podcast yet to make us do that, because that seems like just easy, easy resource that we should have. So anyways, thank you for submitting your question. Joe, my friend, that is all I have for today's episode. I do appreciate you taking the time from your very busy day. When I say I'm busy, I just mean like my kids are acting bad and I have stuff to do. You are legitimately, I don't want, if you want to small talk for another hour off air to kill some time and take another break, I'm cool with that too. Let Todd know that, oh no, I'm busy. Josh kept my time, man. Had to do the show. But no, I really do appreciate you, my friend.
For sure. Yeah. Always a pleasure, man.
I look forward to talking to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Be safe up there.
Likewise.
Down there.
And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page. Or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor, Imperial Yeast, for supporting us and the home brewing community. Join any top tier of our Patreon community, and you'll get free premium liquid Imperial yeast shipped out to you with your Patreon recipe kit. Get more information at patreon.com/homebrew happy hour. On behalf of Ladit Joe Ermis, the absent Todd Burns, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.
This program is made possible by the checkbook of Mr. Todd Burns and by contributions to our newly launched Patreon by viewers like you. Visit patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and join our community. Thank you.